It's Friday, May 24th, 2024, and I'm with John Jeckovich, highly decorated World War II veteran from the Battle of the Bulge. Went in as a teenager, and he wrote a book 25 years ago. I think the total production was 6 copies about his military life, and we're reading it right now. It's called Their Mother's Son, and we're on the chapter where it's called Delroom, Ballroom, and Delphine, and we're on page 550. So don't worry, it's not going to end soon. This book is almost 900 pages.
And then we're going to start it again.
And then we'll redo it again. Mr. Jeckovich, before I start reading this chapter, do you have anything to say?
I have anything to say before I get shot?
Anything to say about Wood dancing and Delphine before I start reading the chapter?
Delphine, Agnes, and Rosalie, yeah.
They stuck together, right?
Huh?
They stuck together all the time.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, well, they all work together.
Were all the ladies nice?
Huh?
Were all the ladies nice and friendly?
Oh, Agnes was the older one.
What happened to Agnes? Did she get married?
Who?
The oldest one, Agnes, did she get married?
Agnes?
Yeah, you said there's 3 of them.
Agnes never got married. She never had a boyfriend or nothing.
Uh-huh. How about the other lady? What was her name?
Rosalie?
Did she get married?
Yeah, she married that stupid Eddie that was crazy about cars.
Okay, did you see them much once they got married?
Yeah.
How were they, a nice couple?
Yeah, well,
Pretty nice, huh?
he was a drinker. He was a socialite with his buddies at the tavern. He's more into cars, but cars, not to fix them, but cars are what they're classified as.
Oh, that's nice. That's a good hobby.
Hi, Claire. Come on in.
Huh?
Hello, Claire.
Come on over.
How you
have a
doing
seat.
today?
Hi, Claire.
We got a seat reserved for you.
Have a seat.
And have a candy, too. Have a seat. We're just starting, Claire, on the chapter which we left off on yesterday. It's called Delroom, Ballroom, and Delphine. We're on page 550. This is the chapter where Mr. Jeckovich meets his wife. But his only problem was that his future wife always had 2 girlfriends with him, so it was hard to get rid of the girlfriend so he could
Who's the
have
wife?
to talk with her.
Say that again.
I said, this is where you meet your wife, but your wife always had 2 girlfriends with her at the dances, and you were trying to
Oh, Rosalie and Agnes.
trying to keep the 2 away so you could be able to talk to your future
Yeah, well,
wife.
they were working buddies.
So, did you have anything more to say? Say a little bit more before I start reading your chapter. Have anything more to add to it?
No, I didn't mind Agnes and Rosalie.
They were nice people.
You know, and Delphine didn't say one way or the other. If
Were
I
they
had
much-
wanted them, she wouldn't say anything.
Were they much older than Delphine?
No, they were all regular 20, 21, 22. All worked at the grants.
Did they all live at home?
Yeah.
Did any of them were in some type of military service during the war?
No. They were 12 years old then.
Okay, I understand. Okay. Let me know when you want to start reading, unless you want to add something else.
Wow.
Unless you want to add something else, I'll start reading this
Oh,
chapter.
go ahead.
Okay, could you hear me fine?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Delwood, Ballroom, and Delphine.
Delphine.
Speaking of the name Delphine, that's a classic name. Have you ever met anyone else named Delphine?
No.
Have you ever heard of Delphine before, Claire? I haven't either. So that's a very unique name.
I've never heard of anyone.
Uh-huh.
Huh?
I never heard of anyone.
Named Delphine. How do you think her mother and father got a hold of that name? Was it a Polish name?
Probably was Polish, they translated it to English.
I see.
Yeah.
So you never in your lifetime of almost 100 years on this earth have heard of another Delphine?
No.
No, okay, I haven't either. Okay, here we go. Walking towards the exit, I saw her standing a short distance ahead of me. She saw me coming toward her, and she stood there as if she was waiting for me. "Hi," I blurted out nonchalantly. As I could get the words out, she smiled and stood there looking at me. Just then the music started up again, and I muttered, expecting to be rejected, "Would you care to dance?" She smiled yes, and I knew about the eventful occurrence I had sensed earlier that evening has taken place. We danced the next few numbers, and I could see her friends smiling gleefully as we would pass them standing along the sides with the rest of the spectators. So I'm trying to figure what this scenario looks like. Delwood Ballroom is a big ballroom,
Yeah.
and you have a certain number in the middle dancing, and there's many, many others on the outside waiting to dance, right outside of the
No,
ballroom.
they were sightseers.
They were sightseers.
Yeah.
But at any time, a man could have came up and tapped her on the back, or tapped you on the back, and he could have danced with them. Is that how they did
A
it?
man?
Yeah, but is that how
I
they
wouldn't dance with a man, no.
Not you. Was
A
it
woman.
common practice there when a lady is dancing with a man, another man could just tap the lady on the back and they could start dancing with another partner?
Cut the other one out.
Yeah, is that happens? Does,
Yeah, well, that was routine, yeah. But
Okay,
they
that was
did-
routine.
Hell, they all knew each other.
okay, I'm just trying to figure it
They
out.
all knew each other.
Okay. We danced the next few numbers, and I could see her friends smiling gleefully. Strangely, I felt comfortable and at ease with her, and not into saying anything. I had a great compulsion to carry out a great running conversation, and we both felt content to just dance and be together. After a while, we went before her friends and chatted with them for a few moments. Then they stated they would be leaving soon, and it was getting late. I asked if she would be leaving also, and she replied that she would. I quickly asked without thinking if they were driving. They all smiled slightly and said they were not. I then suggested, contrary to what I had cautioned myself, that I would drive them to their respective homes. So now you had to drive all three of them
Yeah, all
home.
three of them, yeah. Every different ends of town.
How long did that take?
Huh?
How long did
About
that
an
take?
hour and a half.
Was there snowy or was there snow on the ground?
There was a little sprinkle of snow. It was cold out. It was cold out.
Was there ice on the road?
Yes.
Did you have snow tires
I had snow tires with the spikes in them, yeah.
with the studs in them? With the
Pardon?
metal studs were in the snow tires?
Pardon?
In your snow tires, did you have these like little metal studs?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Did that help a lot?
Yeah. You couldn't go over 50 with them.
Well, you didn't go over 50, did you? After a while, we went back to our friends and chatted with them. They looked at one another, then at me, and one blurted out, "Are you sure you don't mind
Mind what?
taking them home? Driving them home?"
Well, they'd be pissed off if I did take them home.
I answered that I would be delighted.
And delighted. I was delighted.
Delighted. Wondering if I would regret it in making that decision. I waited for them while they all went into the powder room, and I noticed that they came out all primped up. At the moment it occurred to me I would have to take them somewhere before driving them home. So they came out of the powder room with a lot of makeup and perfume, so it was giving you an indication they didn't want to go home, they wanted to go someplace else.
They had to go to a coffee shop and have the coffee
Okay.
door or something like that.
The seating arrangement in the car was established almost spontaneously, which I was grateful for. My friend sat with me in the front seat, and the other two companions sat in the rear seat.
Where was Delphine?
In the front seat,
Yeah.
and the two
And
girls,
Miss Wilson in the back.
and the two girls in the back.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I asked them where would they like to go before starting for home. They hesitated for a moment, surprised at my suggestion. Then my front seat passenger stated that coffee would be just fine. I stopped at the nearest Your Host. Delighted to get out of the car, for everyone felt tense and uncomfortable. We took a booth halfway down the aisle of the restaurant. The two companions were sitting on one side, and the two of us sitting on the opposite side. I thought it's best that we find out each other's names. So at this point, you don't even know anyone's names.
Yeah.
Oh my word. Oh my word. So I introduced myself rather stiffly, I suspected. My seating companion was Delphine, a rather unusual name. I reflected at the time, almost French-like. The two girls were Agnes, and the oldest trio was Rosalie, a dark hair with piercing eyes. They all seemed pleasant and charming, and I was beginning to relax a bit and enjoy myself. They all politely ordered coffee only, which I was commendable of the less of them and less expensive. We sat there and gradually became better acquainted, even though I wanted to single out Delphine and talk with her only. We talked a bit about their jobs at the local department store and what they liked and disliked about them. Agnes seemed to be the most contentious about her job, saying that it was too difficult, standing all the time, and the hours were too long, especially on Saturday when they'd open up. They would stay open till 9 p.m. I mentioned that I also worked at a department store when I was going to school, and they all thought that was highly coincidental and intriguing. Delphine was not saying much. I noted, but she managed to sustain her out of the conversation. She was not aloof or distant, but by the same token, she was not pretentious or pompous. After a while, we decided to leave, and I commenced to drive each other home to their individual houses. Agnes was the closest from where we were presently, so I drove her down Main Street, and I came to Amherst, and then turned a block on Bedford. Agnes lived in a small bungalow behind a larger two-story brick house in an older neighborhood. She lived there with her widowed mother and was the only daughter. I bade her good night and thanked her for a pleasant evening. She returned the compliment, somewhat embarrassed and a stranger seeing where she lived. So Agnes didn't like the house she was living in. She was a little embarrassed. Delphine and Rosalie said good night to her and said they would see her Monday morning at work. Rosalie was next, driving west on Amherst and then going south on Niagara Street, past Delavan and West Ferry, and then turning onto Hampshire for several blocks to Fargo. It was an older house in an older neighborhood, an extremely busy street for being a side street. Rosalie lived there with her parents and her younger sister and her older brother. She was not concerned as Agnes regarding her neighborhood as she's seen by a stranger. She said good night to Delphine and me, thanked me for the ride, and said she would call Delphine tomorrow. Suddenly, it was very quiet in the car, and we both felt uneasy at being alone with each other. I asked for directions, and Delphine quickly remarked that I continue up Niagara Street until the square downtown and then turn on Broadway. I told her that Rosalie and Agnes were pleasant and she was fortunate to have them as good friends. She agreed and did not elaborate on it any further.
That's good.
She then remarked that she appreciated me driving them home, for they would be waiting for their individual buses and later transfers that they... Okay, good night.
All
Bye.
right, good night.
Bye, Claire, and the transfers they entailed. We reached Broadway, and Delphine told me to continue down Broadway for quite a way.
Now, who's down Broadway?
Delphine's giving me directions to her house. Good night, Claire.
Good night, Claire. Give it back.
We reached Broadway, and Delphine told me to continue down Broadway for quite a way, almost to Bailey Avenue. As we drove, it was obvious that we both felt ill at ease, not knowing what to say to one another. I also realized that she was a little shy and rather bewildered at being driven home by a stranger. Delphine had asked where I lived in Buffalo, and when I replied I lived in the Falls, she did not know what to say. As she was taken back at my answer. She did mention that her father knew some friends in the Falls and would visit them once or twice a year. I asked where they lived, but she did not know, and was a little uneasy at her knowledge concerning it. You're turning left at the street, she kept remarking, regaining her composure somewhat from our previous conversation. We drove almost to the end of the block, a dead-end street, and I made a U-turn and parked on the side of the street where our house was on. It was a large two-story family house with a large porch on both floors and perhaps 8 feet between the houses. I turned the headlights off but kept the engine running, and I asked her if she wanted to talk for a few minutes. Delphine agreed, but I could see that she was a bit apprehensive. I thought she felt obligated to be driving her home and owed that courtesy, although her action and demeanor never suggested anything of the kind. As we talked about her younger sister and brother and her older sister, she became more relaxed and started to be more spontaneous. She asked me if I came to Buffalo often and what I did in the winter when it snowed and made the roads intolerable for driving. We must have sat there for 30 minutes or more when she finally said that she must go in for it is getting late. I agreed and asked her if she would see me, might see her again. She hesitated for a moment, then replied that she would be at the dance next Saturday. I quickly replied, I'll be working the next 2 weekends and could not possibly get off. She seemed perplexed as I was grasping for some satisfactory solution to seeing her again. I finally asked her if it would be possible to have her phone number, and perhaps I might call her in the next several days. Again, she mulled over it and consented and advised me to call her after 7 p.m. as she did not get home from work earlier than that. I agreed, thinking it inappropriate to kiss her goodnight. I scooted out of the car, opened her door, and escorted her to the side door. I could hear a small dog barking inside the house, and that caused a bit of trepidation. Thanking her for a pleasant evening, I said I will call her in several days. Delphine smiled graciously and thanked me once again for driving her and her friends home.
Did you walk her up to the door?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the stupid dog barker.
The stupid dog was barking.
Was it a big dog?
No, it wasn't a big dog, but it was mouthy too.
It barked a lot.
Yeah.
Did it wake up the parents when the dog was barking?
The who?
Did it wake up the household when the dog was
I
barking?
don't know. Nobody said anything.
With that, she went up the 3 steps to the door, entered the house. I made a mental note of the position of the house in relation to the adjoining houses and to glance at the house number. Driving home on Bailey, I went over the evening's events and debated whether it was an eventful evening, as I supposed. I did not know from all that transpired between Delphine and me. There was an aura of doubt that persisted and seemed to increase in tempo as the evening progressed. She seemed reluctant to further our acquaintance and was hesitant and uneasy each time I suggested we made a future meeting. Then it suddenly struck me. She had a steady boyfriend or was possibly engaged and did not want to further our relationship.
Polak.
What's that?
The Polak.
Oh, who's a Polak?
The boyfriend.
Oh, okay. Do you remember his name?
Stanley.
Stanley?
Stanley.
Do you remember his last name?
Yeah.
It was a thought, and I must admit, made me feel all the more uneasy and anxious. In any event, I had an enjoyable evening, and I did not have the opportunity every day to drive 3 women home. The final answer would be in several days when I would call Delphine if it was not that optimistic. Still, there was a lingering and persistent regarding Delphine, and that took a hold of me and would not let go. That eerie sense that she knew everything about me and could anticipate my actions and inclinations. Even though we reacted as strangers, meeting for the first time. We really were not strangers after all, but we knew one another very well. The enigma was persist throughout most of our first encounters and even into more lasting relationship further into the future. I thought about our relationship for several days and agonized over it constantly, trying to fathom it as it presented. Finally, I decided to call Delphine one evening about a week after last seeing her. She probably thought I had forgotten about her, as I did tell her I'd call her several days from that Saturday at the dance. The thought crossed my mind, what if she had given me a fictitious phone number and I could not reach her?
Who's making all that noise?
What if she had given me a fictitious phone number and I could not reach her? I did not dwell on it, for somehow I knew the number she gave me would put me in touch with her, and I concentrated on that, what I would say. Since I would never call from home, especially long distance, I drove to the train station on Fall Street. There were several public phones, supplied with 8 to 10 quarters and several times. I reached the operator, and she gave me an out-of-town phone number. The younger female answered, and I asked if I might speak to Delphine. There was a short silence, and the operator interrupted and advised me to insert several more quarters for 3 minutes. After the last clang from the quarter I deposited, there was a long hello. I immediately responded, Delphine, this is John from the dance. I didn't call sooner. Sorry I didn't call sooner. There was a silence, and the first thought I had, she hung up on me. All of my doubts came rushing back as I waited for the click on the phone on the other end. Okay, that was the end of chapter 18. And now we're getting to chapter 19, page 555. And chapter 19 is titled Courting Delphine.
Courting?
Courting Delphine.
Courting?
Courting. Courting Delphine.
Courting.
Courting Delphine. Did you want to make any comments before I start reading?
No, go
You
ahead.
sure? Finally, I began to hear a rustling on the phone on the other end, and it was faint. Oh, hi. And once again, discerned the uncertainty and hesitation in her voice. Knowing that my time was limited, I decided to get to the crux of my call. When can I see you again? I blurted out, uncertain of the response. Again, hesitation, and finally, gosh, I don't know. How about the next dance Saturday? I quickly responded I had to work Saturday night, and not all pleased with that answer she had given me. A bit peeved at the way the conversation was going, I ventured suggestions. So, how about the day after tomorrow, Thursday, I asked, my voice betraying my peak feeling. Uncertainty was once again. I knew the operator would be interrupting any moment for additional quarters. That would be fine. Can you meet me after work around 6:30 at the rear of the store? This time, the voice on the other end was more dynamic and eventful. I replied that that would be fine. I quickly verified where she worked and the location she confirmed. Just then the operator broke in and hastily responded, I'll see you Thursday night. I could hear say goodbye and a repeat Thursday night. As I walked out of the station to the car, I was a little anxious. Would she keep the date for Thursday? Also, would it take some explaining to Mother and Sally about my plans for Thursday? I decided to tell them I was going to a retirement party. You're in your 20s. What the hell kind of retirement party are you going to?
Yeah.
You're going to tell your mother and Sally you're going to a retirement party. You're still in your 20s. Who the hell is retiring? For one of the workers. And I would be home after midnight. That sounded reasonable, and it was better than telling them point blank that I wanted to see someone, a date in other words. I thought about the phone conversation, and it bothered me that I was not quite understand Delphine's demeanor, or more precisely, her indeterminate attitude. It was as if she really did not want to bother with me, as she was indecisive and almost negative. It appeared that she was indifferent and did not care one way or the other. Perhaps Thursday meeting would allow would relieve my apprehensions. I would realize it making too much of a figment of my imagination. Despite all my trepidation, I still felt a strong and compelling attraction towards her that in itself gave me great impetus and propulsion to see her again. She was physically attractive with the long hair and delicate angelic facial features, gracefully augmented by the well-proportioned figure. Her slender legs were especially enticing, as she always wore high-heeled pumps, which accentuated her slender ankles. Granted, her physical appearance was alluring and sensuous, but there was something more compelling and tantalizing about her. This was a conundrum that occupied so many of my thoughts regarding her. I felt slightly guilty in telling Mother a white lie regarding my movements Thursday night, but I thought it more expeditious rather than going into a lengthy digression, rather